Boldwood presents One Hollywood Sunset, written by Mandy Baggot and read by Mira Dovreni. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. Chapter 1. Where were her pants? It was Wednesday, and Wild Wednesday pants had a picture of a cowgirl waving a lasso on the front of them. Freya Johnson rifled through the top drawer of the wooden dresser, continuing the search. She had found Sexy Sunday and Funky Friday, but no Wild Wednesday. She really didn't have time for this pants dilemma today. She sighed, gave up the search, and opted for a plain black pair. "Hey, is it not Wild Wednesday?" her fiancé Nicholas Kaden remarked. He entered their bedroom and playfully hit her behind with the towel he had been using to dry his hair. He was fresh from the shower and still wet. Freya licked her lips and then restored the frown to her face. "Have you seen them? Has Willis been through my knicker drawer again?" Willis was their black and white cat. He liked weird stuff. Maybe. Did you never think that Willis and I might be in league together? A pact to ensure you're pantyless for longer?" Nicholas asked her. He was grinning. Here they called it a shit-eating grin. Back in the UK, she'd called it a smug-ass face. He still managed to look gorgeous. "I could believe that of you, but not of sweet little Willis," Freya responded, as she put a cream short-sleeved top over her head and picked up a pair of black trousers from the floor. "Sweet little Willis? The same cat who, when he isn't doing his business in my shoes, is scratching the hell out of the sofa," Nicholas reminded her as he continued to dry himself off. "He's just adjusting, marking his territory. A bit like we did when we first arrived here." Freya spoke, smiling. They'd just about marked every room. In fact, they'd broken the coffee table. "I don't remember crapping in anyone's shoes." "You really don't remember the housewarming party, do you?" Freya said, running a brush through her blonde hair and checking her reflection in the mirror. "I remember you trying to get all our neighbours to play drinking games with you." "But it wasn't me who suggested playing Naked Twister. That was Brian, and he's not going to be invited to the next gathering." Nicholas laughed. "I've got Sadie Fox coming to see me today," Freya told him, as she began to search around the bedroom for her shoes. "For a shoot?" "No, not yet. She wants to talk first. Tell me in great detail how she likes things done." "How did she put it?" "What she expects from her photographers," Freya replied. "Yeah, well, don't let her boss you around. She isn't the only fashion designer interested in your work. You're good, and if she doesn't realise, then it's her loss," Nicholas said. He chose a shirt from the wardrobe. "Boss me around? Do you really think she could?" Freya questioned, finding one of her shoes under the bed. "No. I guess you're right. Forget I said anything." "So, what are you doing today? Another day sat on the sofa calling it work?" Freya asked him. "Hey, it is working. I was reading through a script," he reminded her. "Hey, it is working. I was reading through a script. Who are you trying to kid? Sitting watching the Hallmark Channel with a jug of lemonade and a plate of nachos is not working," Freya said, laughing. "You're just jealous," Nicholas said. He smiled. A nice one, not the smug-ass face. "Yes, I am." "Well, this morning I'm going to see Mark Phillips about the autobiography. Then I was planning to go for a run because last night someone persuaded me to take a shower with them instead of working out. I'll need to do double today. Then I was going to sit and watch the Hallmark Channel and read through the script," he said. "Is sex not a workout?" Freya asked him, a grin on her face. "Last night probably was," he admitted, nodding. "So you're still undecided about the film then?" Freya said, locating her other shoe under a pile of towels on the floor. "Yeah, still undecided." Freya watched him pull on a pair of blue jeans. It was little times like these that she thanked the Lord for him. "How much sex, violence and foul language in the script?" she asked.
Minimal sex, a couple of F words, but a reasonable amount of violence.
I'm surprised they haven't upped the nudity, seeing as you aren't opposed to getting it all out on camera, Freya said, giggling. I don't get it out for just anyone, you know, he insisted. No? She asked, moving across the room towards him. No. Well, I think you should go back to them and say you want at least 10 more butt scenes. That would be what I'd want out of a movie, Freya told him. She stopped him from buttoning up his shirt and smoothed her hands over his stomach, moving them up to his chest. It would it? He responded, pulling her top upwards. And maybe not. She let him go and bounded out of the bedroom. Hey! Come back here! There are names for women like you, Nicholas called out, chasing her onto the landing. Freya screamed and hurried down the stairs, heading for the kitchen. Come here, you tease, he ordered as he followed her at speed around the breakfast bar and back out of the kitchen, down the hallway towards the front door. Stop right there or I open the front door. It's freezing and Don is there and Kevin and 2 other faces I don't recognise, Freya threatened, referring to the photographers outside their home. I'm not the one who's going to have my clothes ripped off, Nicholas warned, pushing her against the door and kissing her neck. Unbolting the door right now. It's going to be centre spread in Shooting Stars magazine, Freya said, reaching up to pull the chain off the door latch. Okay, you win, Nicholas conceded, stepping back from her with a sigh. I'm sorry. I'd love nothing more than to have you out of those jeans, but I can't be late this morning, Freya reminded him. I know, it's Sadie Fox. And no matter what a tyrant she is, I know you would love to photograph for her, Nicholas replied. Think of the money we could give to charity. She seriously overpays. I know, you said, it's fine. You can leave me frustrated. I'll deal, Nicholas answered, kissing her cheek. I'll make it up to you. Listen, there's leftover pizza if you want breakfast. I'm going to have to dash, Freya said, looking at her watch. Without even a cup of tea? He raised an eyebrow. Oh, I've had a cup of tea, and I've fed Willis, and the photographers have had tea too. And I did all that while I was trying to find my Wednesday pants, Freya informed him with a smile. You are one amazing woman, Nicholas told her. And don't you forget it. Speaking of not forgetting things, you have remembered we're going to Sam and Jolie's tonight for Sam's birthday, haven't you? Freya asked. She took her handbag from where it hung over the banister. Is that tonight? You mean the efficient Sandra hasn't emailed you your schedule yet? Yes, it's tonight. So, could you drop into Mason's and pick up the fancy dress outfits on your way through? Freya asked him. Fancy dress? You mean costumes? Yes, costumes. Wait until you see what you're wearing, Freya said with a laugh. I'm dreading it already. OK, well, wish me luck with the viper-tongued fashion designer, Freya said, taking her car keys from her handbag. Good luck and call me. Let me know how it goes, he said. Don't forget, extra nudity in that script, and hold that thought until later, Freya said. Her suggestion was clear. I certainly will. He kissed her lips. Bye, Freya said. She opened the door. Bye, Nicholas replied. Freya stepped out onto the wooden porch and sucked in a breath. Winter wasn't a favourite season of hers, and the past month it had been uncharacteristically cold. The next week threatened to bring snow, and she knew the kind of snow they got in the US wasn't the light dusting usually experienced in the UK. Nick had mentioned chains and snowshoes and bulky clothes. The only good thing was snow meant Christmas had to be getting closer. She loved Christmas. As she left the house, the photographers began to take pictures. It was one of the downsides of living with a Hollywood actor. However, she had found that by taking them an early morning cup of tea, dressed only in a nightshirt and robe, all other photographs they took were infinitely better. And once people had seen one photograph of her in her nightclothes, they weren't really interested in another. Besides, she didn't feel duty-bound to protect her image like Nicholas did. Boys, is it really necessary? You've had me in my Mickey Mouse pyjamas this morning, and they weren't even my best pair, Freya called to them as she walked down the steps towards her car. But they were very nice. I like the ribbons, Donnie, one of the photographers, called back to her. Hey, Donnie, if you want raw photos, I'd stick around because Nick's dressing up tonight, Freya informed him. Will there be leftover takeout? Don't push it. She got into her red Ford Expedition and shut the door behind her. how her life had changed. In the space of a year, she had met Nicholas Kaden, become engaged, sold her photography business in England, and moved to America. She smiled as she remembered the impromptu holiday to Corfu to visit her best friend Emma. That break had changed everything. Emma's life had been altered forever too. She was now a wife and mother, and little Melissa Susan Petrohollis, 2 months old, was making her presence felt in the world, usually in the early hours of the morning. But that holiday had been important for another reason. It had helped Freya leave her life as Jane Lawson Peck completely behind. Her father, Eric Lawson Peck, was a billionaire businessman with companies all over the world and fingers in lots of pies. But he was also a monster. He had beaten Freya throughout her childhood, and his treatment, coupled with the extravagant way her parents had led their lives, had culminated in Freya spending 9 months in jail after setting fire to their home. She had been just 18. Thankfully, that nightmare was now all in the past. Nicholas knew everything and accepted her for who she was. He also accepted her for the size she was. Freya's weight had always been a battle, and a battle she really wasn't interested in fighting. She loved food, she hated exercise. It was a lethal combination. She was a size 20. She sometimes lost a few pounds, sometimes gained a few pounds, but ordinarily she stuck, and that was her. Take it or leave it. She knew she wouldn't be able to change, and she was getting towards feeling comfortable with that. Despite being devastatingly handsome, Nicholas had certain confidence issues too. He had beaten testicular cancer some years previously, but had only felt able to share this information with the world after he met Freya. She had given him the strength to go public, and since broadcasting the news, they had set up the Nicholas Kaden Foundation. It raised money towards cancer research and bought vital equipment to assist in diagnosis and treatment. Freya started up the car and drove down the gravel driveway towards the photographers at the gate. They moved out of the way as the electronic gate swung open, and she waved at them as she headed off up the road. Now, home for Nicholas and Freya was Mayleaf, a small town on the outskirts of Hollywood. When Freya had first arrived in Los Angeles, they had lived in one of Nicholas's enormous houses in the thick of things. Freya had hated it. Despite having lived in the hustle and bustle of London, the noise and activity of life in Hollywood had not even compared. The house itself had been a fortress. It had been full of cameras and alarms and surrounded by an electric fence. Freya hadn't been able to live like that, so they had house hunted. Freya had known exactly the type of house she wanted to live in. It had been a picture she'd held in her mind from childhood, when she'd been like the princess in the tower, desperate to escape. The house she saw in her mind was large and white, with a big, covered wooden porch outside the front door. It had a garden with mature trees, a lawn, and a swing. Inside it was modest, but most importantly, it was homely. It would be somewhere she felt comfortable in and comforted by. A haven. They had looked at a dozen houses in various towns in the vicinity of Hollywood. But as soon as they'd driven up to Whitewood House, Freya knew it was the one. And Mayleaf, as a town, was perfect. It was small, with a handful of shops and eateries, a gas station, a town hall, a high school, one bar, and a diner. As cliched as it was, it reminded Freya of every small town she'd ever seen on any American movie. But it was its sense of community Freya really loved. It was so close-knit, and everyone knew each other, and the benefits of this far outweighed the downsides as far as she was concerned. The town had been nothing but welcoming to Nicholas and Freya, and they'd even introduced some new town laws banning journalists from entering the town circle. This basically meant they couldn't be pestered when they were in the town centre. It also meant they could participate in town gatherings and activities without being spied on by the press. At present, the town elders were discussing whether or not to increase the boundaries of the town circle to incorporate Nicholas and Freya's house. That would stop the photographers congregating there. Freya knew some of the decisions had been made because they'd made a considerable donation towards the repair of the town hall roof, but no one treated them any differently in any other respect, and they both liked that. Freya's new photography business, Exposure, had been established half an hour's drive away in the affluent city of Carlton. Freya had originally wanted to set up a business in Mayleaf itself, but there weren't suitable premises. In the end, having discussed it with Nicholas, she decided Carlton was the best option, as it was closer to the main road from the airport and would be easier for people to get to. Since her explicit photographs of Nicholas had been auctioned for charity, and news of their engagement was announced, everyone who was anyone in Hollywood wanted Freya to take their picture. At first, Freya found the prospect of this frightening, but having now shot dozens of A-list celebrities, it was becoming a lot more comfortable. And this morning's meeting with Sadie Fox was a chance to get into the fashion industry. That could mean big business. If Freya was truthful, she'd much rather photograph a craggy landscape or the ocean at sunset. But she knew she had a real talent for capturing something different in people when she photographed them. And she was making the most of this current popularity, taking the business, making the money, and giving away the majority of it. It was her plan to benefit as many people as possible with the money. That ethic was the complete opposite to her parents and their ostentatious lifestyles. She liked being the opposite of them. When Freya arrived at her studio, her assistant Sasha was waiting at the entrance with a polystyrene cup in one hand and a large pastry in the other. Sasha was tall, slim, blonde and 25. When Freya interviewed for the position of her assistant, she'd been determined to hire a man, because that was what she'd been used to. She'd also been determined not to hire anyone who was younger, slimmer or more attractive than she was, despite what employment law stipulated. However, Sasha had shown more enthusiasm in photography than the rest of the candidates put together. She was also computer literate and made good tea. There was no competition. "Morning, Sasha. Well-timed as always." What flavour is this one?" Freya asked as she took the pastry and sank her teeth into it. "It's dark chocolate today. Milo at the patisserie is trying out a new recipe, and he wanted me to let him know what you think," Sasha replied, following Freya through the reception area and into her office. Well, tell him I love him. This is so good. Right, so appointments for today. Sadie Fox at 9 and..." Freya started, sitting down in her chair. "Actually, Sadie Fox called earlier and she's had to cancel. She apologised and said something about having to fly to Paris urgently this morning," Sasha informed. "Oh no, Sasha! Why didn't you call me? I passed up sex with my fiancé for that appointment. Have you seen how attractive my fiancé is?" Freya exclaimed in horror. "Yes, I have," Sasha said, nodding. "You don't pass up sex with someone as handsome as that unless it's really crucial. Damn that woman," Freya stated, leaning backwards in her chair and taking another bite of the pastry. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to call your cell because I assumed you'd be driving," Sasha spoke. "Which is why they invented the hands-free kit. Look, never mind. I'm sure the no-sex thing can be remedied later. So, who else is booked in today?" Freya asked. "Just someone who phoned this morning, someone called Jonathan Sanders." Freya paled immediately, not certain whether she had heard her assistant correctly. It was a name instantly familiar to her. "Sorry, Sasha, run that one by me again. Did you say Jonathan Sanders?" Freya checked. "Yes, I did. Is that a problem?" "Yes. No. Well, maybe, I don't know. Was he English?" Freya asked, putting the pastry down on top of a photography magazine on her desk. "Yes, very well spoken." "Well spoken? Perhaps it isn't who I'm thinking of in that case," Freya responded, taking a sip of her tea. The Jonathan Sanders Freya was thinking of was the boy she'd begun dating when she was just 16. He'd been her first love, and they'd been serious. Serious enough for Freya to tell him her real name was Jane Lawson Peck, and for her to introduce him to her parents. Days after that meeting, her father paid him to leave her, and she hadn't seen him since. That was over 13 years ago. "Are you okay?" Sasha asked. Yes, I'm fine. What time's he coming in?" Freya asked, composing herself. "He said he wanted to take you out to lunch about 1, Sasha added. "Oh. Well, did he leave a number? Maybe I'll call him." "I'm probably going to be tied up this lunchtime," Freya said, using her mouse to click open her diary on the computer screen. She knew she had nothing else on, but she felt uneasy about it. "Yes, he did. Here," Sasha said, and she jotted the number down on a post-it note and passed it to Freya. "Thanks. So, how are you doing for work today?" Freya asked her, trying to turn her attention to something other than Jonathan Sanders. I have an appointment. I'm having lunch with Heather and Malcolm about doing some football team photos for the university. You said if she called back, I could deal with it, Sasha reminded. I remember. Well, if you carry on being so capable, there'll be no need for me to come here every day, Freya remarked. Sorry, Sasha started. Sasha, I was kidding. It's fine, you're doing really well. I tell you what, tomorrow, how about you and I shut ourselves in a room and go through some techniques I think will be really useful for you, Freya suggested. That sounds great. I'd like that. Good. Well, one pastry down. What's next? Freya asked, brushing the crumbs from her fingers. Sasha went through the rest of the appointments for the week, but Freya was unable to absorb it. The lunchtime appointment with Jonathan Sanders was disturbing her. It couldn't be the same person. It was quite a common name, and America was a big place. It was unlikely it was the same man. But Sasha said he was English. It could be exactly who she thought. She needed to discuss it with someone. She needed her best friend. Chapter 2. Hello? Emma's voice answered after several rings. Hello, Mrs. P. How is that goddaughter of mine? Freya questioned. She smiled at the sound of her best friend's voice. Oh, hi, Freya. She's fine, asleep at the moment. I was just trying to catch up on some myself, Emma replied. Her friend sounded jaded. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I didn't think. Time difference. Typical me. I'll let you go, Freya said. No, don't go. I haven't spoken to you for over a week. How is everything in the US? Emma asked. The US is fine, Nick is fine, I'm fine. But Sasha's just informed me I have a lunchtime appointment with Jonathan Sanders, Freya told her. Jonathan Sanders? You're Johnny? Emma exclaimed. I don't know, but those were my first thoughts too, Freya answered with a sigh. What do you mean you don't know? You must know. I mean, it's an appointment. You usually know who you're meeting. Or did they do blind appointments over there to make work more fun? Emma questioned. Sasha spoke to him and made the arrangement. She said he was English, but she said he was well-spoken. Johnny was from Hackney. He was anything but well-spoken, Freya reminded her. Well, a few years have gone by. He'll be about the same age as you now. Things change. You can vouch for that. He might have done well for himself, Emma suggested. But in what field? I mean, how many fields require him to need a photographer? Freya wanted to know. Perhaps he doesn't want to meet you in a business capacity. Maybe he just wants to catch up with you. I mean, you said a lunch meeting. Perhaps it's just lunch. But why? Why would he want lunch with me now after all this time? Freya questioned. I don't know. Perhaps he saw you in a magazine or a newspaper and it brought back memories and he thought it might be nice to get in touch, Emma suggested. I wonder what he's expecting me to say. I mean, he dumped me for money. That's like a red rag to a bull, she responded, chewing a pen as she thought about it. Perhaps he thinks he might have calmed down about it now, because you're happy with a successful business and a wonderful man. He's probably thinking some of the angst might have evaporated, Emma told her. Didn't know me very well then, did he? Angst is pretty permanent once you've pissed me off, Freya reminded her. Maybe it isn't him, Emma replied. Yeah, you're right, it probably isn't him. It just freaked me out hearing the name, Freya said. I can understand that, Emma answered. But it probably isn't him, Freya repeated. No, Emma agreed. But what am I going to do if it's him? Freya asked her. Freya, if it's him, you are going to A, be professional, and B, remember he's over 30 now, not the 17-year-old he was when he took the money from your father, Emma told her. But I can't not mention that. I mean, it would be odd if I didn't, wouldn't it? Why don't you see if he mentions it? And then, if you get to your desserts and he hasn't mentioned it, you can slip it in over coffee, Emma suggested. Good idea. Now I know why I called you. I'm glad no one's taken over my role, even though you're living further away than ever, Emma told her. You are irreplaceable. So, how's motherhood? Tiring. I thought being pregnant was exhausting, but it was nothing compared to the sleep deprivation I'm suffering now, Emma explained. But Yanis is helping with the night feeding, right? Freya checked. Yes, he dotes on Melly, but I'm trying to breastfeed. So it's difficult to share that. Oh, God. I know it's meant to be wonderful and natural, and certainly all the A-listers are giving it a go from what I've heard. But God, I don't think I could do it. Well, it isn't easy, but I'm trying to persevere. I bet if it were men with the breasts, the percentage of babies being breastfed would be dramatically reduced. I expect you're right. Listen, I'm going to try and come and see you in the next couple of months, because I have yet to see my little godchild in the flesh, Freya told her. That will be nice. How long is the flight time for you? Emma asked. Don't mention the flight time, or I might just hurl right now. It's something stupid like 15 hours with a stop in Paris, Freya said, her stomach churning at the thought of it. You mean Nick hasn't got a private jet? Nick used to have a private jet. In fact, he used to have a lot of fancy things he didn't need. I've been streamlining, Freya answered with a smile. I hope Villa Camilla isn't on your unnecessary list just yet, Emma said. Villa Camilla was Nicholas's holiday home in Cassiope, Corfu. Emma, Yanis and Melissa were living in it while their own house was being built. No, don't worry, we won't be selling that anytime soon. That's the one luxury item I want to hold on to, Freya admitted. Well, hopefully we won't be in it for all that much longer. The builders are progressing with the house quite well. Greek builders, Freya remarked. Yes? Greek builders progressing well, Freya stated. I know what you're getting at, but it really isn't a mythical tale. They've nearly finished building the main structure. When you come over, I'll take you on a tour, Emma promised. I'll bring a hard hat, just in case the progress slows down between now and then. You have no faith, Emma said, laughing. I'm sorry. OK, well, I better go. It costs a fortune to phone you in the daytime. Give Melly a kiss from me and tell her Auntie Freya can't wait to cuddle her. Unsoiled, of course, Freya said. I will. And Freya, give me a call later. Let me know about Jonny, Emma ordered her. I will. I've decided it won't be the Jonny we know. It will be some 50-something high roller who wants me to take some pictures of his numerous skyscrapers. I get a lot of those at the moment, Freya said. Well, call me anyway, but not after 7 my time, because we're trying to get Melly into a routine. Noted. I'll speak to you later, Freya ended. As she replaced the receiver, Sasha came into the office, waving a brochure in the air. Don't tell me! New menu for Phoenix Chinese, gimme! Freya said excitedly. No, it isn't. It's the latest issue of Entertainment Now magazine. You and Nicholas are on the cover, Sasha said, and she put the magazine down on Freya's desk with a flourish. Oh, is that all? Sasha, I think we've had a conversation about this before. Several conversations, in fact. Having my face on the front of a magazine does nothing for me, and... Good God, will you look at my outfit? Someone call the fashion police. What was I thinking? Horizontal stripes do nothing for me, Freya announced, as she picked up the magazine and studied it more closely. I think it's quite a nice picture. See how the photographer got the light just right? I think this was taken around dusk going by the shadows, Sasha told her. Are you trying to impress me, Sasha? This picture was taken when we visited the Carlton General Hospital to donate some money. It was definitely dusky, good spot, Freya answered her. Whoever took it has captured Nick really well, Sasha said, studying the photograph. He's the most photogenic person I know. I could take a picture of him sat on the toilet and he would still come out looking amazing. Note the hint of jealousy. He has a great bone structure. Yes, he does. But enough now, or next you'll be asking for a poster to go above your bed, Freya said. She picked up the magazine and dropped it in the bin. Sorry, Sasha apologised. That's okay. It's you and half of the female population of the world. I am one lucky lady, but don't worry, I do know it, Freya answered with a smile. As she had no appointments that morning, Freya took her equipment and drove to County Bridge. County Bridge was 10 miles north of Carlton, on one of the 5 old bridges, all in a 30-mile radius of the city. Freya had been told about their existence by Casey, who ran the diner in Mayleaf. Their history was they were over 100 years old and had been built by a group of Christians for the purpose of giving the surrounding towns easy access across the river to the area's churches. All of the bridges were different in their style. 2 had arches, 2 had a straight design, and County Bridge, Freya's particular favourite, was a mixture of both. That bridge had an inscription on one of the spindles halfway across, which read, Glory to the Father, leave sorrow behind and take hope from the past. Freya had taken to photographing all the bridges and had built up quite a collection of pictures. Her favourite time of day for capturing them was in the early morning, when the mist was on the water and the sun was just starting to rise. It was important to have the light just right when taking photos of the bridges, as unlike most of the wooden structures in the area, the Christian Fathers bridges, as they were known, were painted black. Freya stood on one side of the river and waited for the bird she was watching to land on the bridge. It was a black crow with a huge beak, scanning the water for flies it was chasing and catching. It flapped its wings, and Freya took a picture. Crows were the only birds she had ever seen at the bridges. It surprised her, as the surrounding area was grass and marsh. She would have expected to see a more varied selection of birds. She'd also never seen any fish in the river near the bridges, although she knew further downstream there was an abundance of trout and carp. She knew this because whenever she walked along the bank to take photographs of the bridges upstream, there were usually at least 2 or 3 fishermen. The crow left the bridge, and Freya took her favourite camera, Claude, away from her eye and let it hang from her neck. She named all her cameras, and Claude was given to her by Nicholas as a late birthday present, just after they first met. Freya walked across the bridge and stopped in the middle to read the inscription as she did every time she visited. Glory to the Father, leave sorrow behind and take hope from the past. Freya spoke out loud. She ran her fingers across the words, feeling the indents made in the black wood. Freya had interpreted it to mean there had been sorrow in the present for the Christian Fathers, and they were taking hope from the past when their religion was founded. But perhaps she was wrong. A crow let out a loud squawk, and Freya flinched, the noise interrupting the stillness, startling her. She looked at her watch and saw it was almost 1:45. Jonathan Sanders would be arriving at the office in just over 15 minutes. If she didn't hurry, she'd be late, and she really wanted to be in her office and composed before he arrived, just in case. She had chickened out of calling him. She was certain it wouldn't be Johnny from London. Why would it be? They had no unfinished business as far as she was concerned. She hurried across the bridge and headed back to her SUV, leaving County Bridge silent and deserted. Chapter 3. By the time she arrived back at the office, Freya was red in the face and sweating. There had been awful traffic on the main road, and she'd had an altercation with a teenage driver of a Carlton cookies van, who pulled out in front of her from a side street. If she didn't love those cookies so much, she would have given the driver a piece of her mind. She could have haggled for a large box of white chocolate chip. She locked the car and jogged towards the office, Claude still swinging from her neck. She hesitated before she went to push open the door. She could see through the glass. If she did step inside, she'd come face to face with Jonathan Sanders. The Jonathan Sanders she hadn't seen since she was 17. It was him. He was sat in one of the leather chairs in the reception area, and Avril, the part-time receptionist, was pouring him some coffee. Freya swallowed as she looked at him. He was wearing an expensive dark suit with a white shirt and a dark grey tie. He looked smart and businesslike. His hair was still jet black, his eyes that chocolatey dark brown. But now he had a short beard, no more than stubble, really. It suited him. He looked up from the cup of coffee and glanced over at the door. Freya pushed quickly and fixed a smile on her face. She needed to remain in control of this meeting. "Johnny," she greeted hurriedly. She moved towards him, hand outstretched. He stood up, put the coffee cup on the small table next to him, and took hold of her hand. "Hello, Freya," he greeted, shaking her hand. And then before she could do anything about it, he drew her towards him and kissed her, first on one cheek and then the other. "Well, someone has been brushing up on their greeting etiquette, haven't they?" Freya remarked awkwardly, knowing her cheeks were flushing. "You look great," he told her. He looked her up and down. "You always did know how to compliment a girl."